One really interesting thing that I think is mentioned in this book is a research about judges. So it's called decision-making fatigue. So,
Yeah.
so basically what the idea is, if you're taking too many decisions in a short succession of time, you're going to be super tired. And then at some point, you're just going to say, yeah, okay, fine, because you're tired of making that decision. So they researched this with judges somewhere in the States. And when they basically sit there in the early morning, every prisoner that would appear in front of them in the morning would never, ever get parole. But like the closer and closer that you get to lunch, the more tired the judges are and the more the parole they give. And then they go to lunch, they come back, they have reset their energy, and nobody's getting parole, and then it goes up again. And it's super interesting. So it turns out that you're basically more willing to take hard decisions in the morning or right after lunch. And we did, here's the link with the upselling part. So we did a research some time ago looking at when is the best time of the day to upsell. And it turns out that business guests has the highest conversion rate in the morning. And conversely, leisure guests has the highest conversion rate in the afternoon. So that's a really interesting one in terms of time of day of upselling.
You're listening to Slick Talk, the hospitality podcast, a podcast for those who are in and around the hospitality industry who love, live, and breathe what they do. You can join us for candid and unscripted conversations with hospitality experts and founders as we go deeper into their personal stories while they're sharing their triumphs and trials that got them to where they are today. I'm your host, Will Slickers, and you're listening to an episode of Slick Talk, the hospitality podcast. Now, let's begin. All right, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Slick Talk, the hospitality podcast. I'm your host, Will Slickers, and today I am joined by Erik, who is the co-founder of Oaky. Erik, my friend, it's super good to have you on the show, and welcome to the podcast.
Thanks a lot, my friend. Awesome to be here. And I have these like a bass boosting headphones. Holy shit, man. That was an awesome introduction.
Well, I was going to say, that's why, like, I was gonna say my favorite part of the podcast is, like, for all the listeners that don't know, I played the intro for all the guests, and behind the scene, I can see everyone kind of bopping their head back and forth. It's my favorite part. It's so fun. But Erik, my man, I was super excited to have you on. We got introduced through one of your colleagues at Oaky, who was saying you'd be a great fit for the podcast, which again, she was right. So for all the listeners' sake, where does your story begin in getting into hospitality and entrepreneurship?
For me, it's a family thing. Everyone in my family have had their own companies. My mom, my dad, my cousins, my brothers. So when I was young, it wasn't like about what I was going to do, but what type of entrepreneurship I was going to endeavor into, I think. I when I was done with college, I think my path to entrepreneurship started in a weird place on the poker felt. So it was back in 2000. Jesus, I'm getting old, man. Like when you surpass like 33, you stop counting, right? But it was maybe back in 2008, and I remember it so clearly because in Sweden, I'm Swedish. In Sweden, they would have like this gift of the year for Christmas. And that year in Sweden, believe it or not, it was a poker set. Like you would gift each other poker chips so you could have home games at home. And everyone was just so hooked on this game. Me too, and one of my best friends as well. And then after like a year of playing really hardcore, and everyone just stopped. Like with any new fade, it kind of just fades out. But me and my buddy, we continued playing, and for the coming like 4 years, we were basically professional poker players, doing a lot of online tournaments, but also traveling around. We did some trips to the West Indies and a lot around Europe and stuff. So that was a very cool way and to throw away your high school years and everything you learned and do something totally different, thinking you're like the kingpin of the world as you win a couple of bucks. But it taught me a lot. And throughout those 5 years, I was completely broke 5 times. And totally. And every time that I went broke, I went into F&B and banqueting. And I think that's maybe my link to hospitality, because there I could really feel how much I truly enjoyed serving other people and like being there for them and giving them a great experience.
Totally. And it's like complete opposites because you're chasing, I wouldn't say a high, so to speak, but probably a thrill, some kind of high, some adrenaline rush, right? When you're playing poker, to then serving food and beverage, where I would say there's very little to any high or rush with that, other than, when you're on a huge, like crazy time schedule, maybe you're serving 300 people and, you have all this like, the circus kind of juggling in the background, but complete opposites. And so I'm curious, just on the like poker lesson front, what lessons did you take from that experience, going broke 5 times in 5 years, to then getting into hospitality? What were some big key takeaways that you really were like, I'm going to implement this into my career moving forward?
And just before I get there, like the high that I still get from interacting with people is like, I don't know how you can explain it. Like my wife is like, it's called highly sensitive. So like you can really feel someone else's energy. And I think I certainly don't have it to the extent that people like that have it, but I have it to some extent. And I thrive on personal interactions, right? So the fact that you can thrive on a high or chasing a big pot or whatever, it's kind of equal actually, if you have a good interaction. But what I learned, I don't know, man. I was totally naive. I went into this and I just went for it. And I would go from having a lot of money to like nothing in like 2 weeks. And it was crazy, right? I had very little respect for money, I think. Maybe in one aspect that was a good thing, because it taught me how to just live life and just do something without being too worried about taking myself too seriously. I think starting a business, you should be a little bit naive. If I would ever start a company again, I don't know if I would have that same naive attitude. That is kind of a beautiful thing to have, because you just do, and you make a ton of mistakes and it's totally fine. Now I guess I would be a lot more hard on myself if I would be repeating those same or different types of mistakes, but you wouldn't expect it the second time around, maybe. And then I think another thing, which definitely is similar, is all the swings. So you go up and down and up and down. And in entrepreneurship, anyone who has done that, you yourself included, you must know, like on any random, what is it today? A Tuesday.
Yeah.
I could start off the day by having someone saying, okay, we're leaving the company. And you're like, oh my God, what worst day ever. And then like a huge contract comes in and I'm like, yes. And then something else. And then it goes like that 3 or 4 times throughout the day. And you're like completely destroyed by the time you get home.
100%. Yeah, it's a constant roller coaster, to the point where like I think it's shared. Like definitely, I think entrepreneurs talk about it and they kind of express like, look, it's not easy. It's a lot of ups and downs. It's not like a straight path to success. It's kind of like a big roller coaster, up and up and up. But yeah, it's definitely, I don't know. I don't even know how to put it in words. Really, it's like one day you could be thriving and the next day, like we just had Memorial Day weekend. So yesterday, normally I work those days. Like I work those like government holidays that are technically off for a lot of people. And this year was the first year like, you know what? No, I'm not doing it, because you know what? No one's going to respond to my emails. No one's going to be seeing my email. No one's going to be seeing the other stuff that we're doing. So I'm not putting myself through that this year, where I'm just going to be like going, through all this stuff. I'm just going to enjoy the day off. And then of course today we wake up and it's like 20 phone calls, 80 emails, all the other stuff. So it's like
huge missed opportunities.
Yeah. It's like, oh gosh. But
someone from Sweden that don't have a Memorial Weekend reach out.
Yeah, exactly. But so you get into food and beverage. So getting into food and beverage, doing some catering, what is the, I would guess, like aha moment where you're like, all right, I'm done with poker. I'm done with that. I'm going to continue in this route. I'm going to go start my career in hospitality. And then let's talk about the one, what is Oaky and how did it come about? That will be the next phase of the question.
Yeah, if I remember it correctly, it was pretty wild, because I had like, I was 23, I think. And I was like, I had just gone broke. And then I end up winning a really big tournament for like 6 digits US dollars. Wow. And after like 2 months, I had nothing left of that money. Like it was crazy. And then I just thought to myself, okay, what am I really doing here? So I talked to my older brothers, because at the time I was also, I was living with my friends at home in Sweden, and was loved my friends to bits, but it was so predictable, my life. Everything was the same. Every Tuesday we would do this, every Wednesday. So I thought either I have to change my friends, or I need to go somewhere else. And so I found this hotel school education in Holland, which was really renowned, had a great name, was affordable, like I could go. And luckily enough, like there was this open day in Gothenburg, which is like 2 hours away from my hometown. So I just went on my little Seat Ibiza that I was driving, like it was stolen at the time, and scooted over there and got in. So it was an open day with interviews and stuff just on the same day, and I got accepted. And basically 2 weeks later, I was there with my luggage in Holland, starting this education. So it was spent very quickly, and I think it was just what I needed, honestly. And that threw me into hospitality, which I loved. And hotel schools, I don't know, have you been to a hotel school before?
Never. We've talked about it a couple times. We've talked about like online hotel schools and stuff, but never to the point where I'm like actually physically there with my luggage 2 weeks later after applying.
Yeah. Now, what I loved about it compared to like a university that I would be used to, like in a university, you're kind of, you're just walking into a building. Maybe it's not comparable to like nice universities in the US, but to me, it was like you're walking into a building. You're one of a bunch of students. Maybe there are some lockers, and that's basically it in classrooms. Walking into this hotel school, it was so nice because the first thing you see is like a reception lobby, and there are these people that are dressed up, and they're treating you like you're a hotel guest. And that's like the whole thing. All students working in housekeeping and beautiful F&B outlets. You have amazing food that are super cheap. And you end up also doing this education and working in all of these outlets. So I really loved it, actually. And it was insanely, very, very international.
So it's very hands-on. It wasn't just like in paper and books and just kind of like reading and learning about hotels. Okay, cool.
And we hire a lot of interns from hotel schools, and like they may not have the best knowledge around like certain topics, maybe like revenue management or whatever, but they're the best people in the industry at being hospitable, obviously, but also at presenting themselves. You can let any one of them into a room, and you know that they're gonna be able to, they're gonna behave, and people are gonna remember them, and they're gonna be liked. That's a very, very positive strength.
Yeah, there's something kind of like how they carry themselves. I've seen it with interns / students / like brand new. When I first started my career, it was a Marriott, so it was a 4-diamond, kind of like luxury conference hotel. And I just remember something about when the like the new guy or the new girl would walk in at the front desk with their coat and jacket, and they're just kind of like a different way that they carry their posture, including myself included. I was young, and so I was like, hell yeah, I'm gonna look good and go talk to all these people all day. So like so it's definitely something on how just people, like, their posture completely changes when they get into that setting. So for you, what was that? Did you have like a crazy transition while you were at school, going from like that poker mindset to
man, yeah. And even like in Sweden, it's very common to take like gap years, and I went bananas, right? I took a 5-year poker gap year, like unheard of. That wasn't. I thought that was going to be my life forever. That was my mindset for many years. So then I get to school, and I realize, Dutch people don't take gap years. So my roommate's 17, and I come there as a 23-year-old, and like completely different humor, and I was in a long relationship at the time, etc. So I had to really change the way that I was in my personality to like it. But that's like also a little bit who I am. I can fit into many different types of settings. I'm a bit like a chameleon, and I can also enjoy it that way. And eventually I became super good friends with all of these people anyway. And it was a really, really great choice for me at the time. And Hotel School The Hague is the name, by the way. I really recommend it I would put my own kid there one day if he wants to.
Yeah, no, I love that. That's super cool. And it's definitely interesting, like seeing that you came in with some world experience prior to just going from high school to hotel school, mom and dad's house to, I don't know, was it like a dorm kind of like living situation, or did you guys have to commute every day? What was that like? Did you live on site of the hotel school?
Yeah, so then you live like in a kind of like a hotel. It was called School Hotel.
Yeah.
And that was also run by students actually, and then these managers that were like basically teachers. So we would live there. And honestly, really, like, it looked like shit, right? So, like, it was disgusting. They were like, I think it was named as like The Hague's ugliest building that year or something. They have since renovated it, I've heard. I haven't seen it myself. But honestly, do you really care when you're like, I was 23, most of the people were 17. A lot of the things you do is you get drunk and hang out with buddies, right? So it was all good. It was all good. And then after the first year, you move out from the Scotel and then moved in with friends, basically.
Okay, that's cool.
Yeah.
So how many years was this for you?
4, including 1 year of internships, where the first one I went to Gleneagles. If I don't know if you're American, maybe you don't know. It's a very nice golf resort in Scotland. So I was basically born with a golf club in my hand because all of my family are entrepreneurs and they're also golfers for some reason. So it was always about, who can hit the longest drive and putt the best and stuff like that in our family. So I was really thrilled to get into this golf resort. And I also did F&B there. But F&B there was a bit different because everyone that was working there, you got this graveyard shift. You got the morning, and then you have the day to do something, and then you have the evening. So first of all, the guest thinks that you're overworked because you're working, like, in their eyes, you're working all the time.
Yeah.
And from a perspective of being the employee, you're also like kind of tired in the middle of the day. So it's a weird, I don't know. I loved being there, but I didn't really enjoy that F&B experience as much because the hours were so weird. Like, you have to plan that better, in my opinion.
I want to say, I don't think humans are really made to do like those like long night, early morning stuff. Like, we have nighttime and daytime for a reason. We're kind of all used to living. But so you're let's say 27, 28 when you graduate at the time. So what's next? Is that where you get into Oaky and what it is today, or was there a different immediately? So what is what is Oaky and what did it start out to be and turn into? I'm very curious.
Oaky right now, some would say, and I would love to hear them say it, but I'll let them say it, that we're the market leader in upselling solutions towards hotels, digital upselling solution. We're based out of Amsterdam. We have a team in APAC as well. We're about 60 people, 60 employees in the company. We service about 3,000 hotels across 100 countries or so. Wow. In the US, we're not that big yet, but we're actually coming to High Tech in Orlando at the end of June. So that's going to be super exciting. Let's meet up there.
Let's make sure we grab a drink then, because I will see you there.
Yeah, I'd love to. But how it started was nothing about upselling, actually. So I did my last internship at a mystery shopping solution in Kuala Lumpur. And I had as a job to get people to visit BMW stores in Scandinavia. And the only people who wants to do that for that little money were students. And they wouldn't even think about buying a BMW, right? So I was thinking, how in the world can this be such a big industry of people giving fake feedback with that is like, and then you base a bunch of marketing dollars on this, to me, it was a bit wild. So we came back and I met Lars, who is one of the co-founders in KL. We realized, okay, we need someone who's really savvy with data and analysis and stuff like this. And that became Taco, who's the third co-founder. So we're 3 guys who really complement each other super well. And I flew directly from KL to Amsterdam. Lars was already there. Then I just took a train to The Hague, got my diploma. I remember Lars and Taco, my co-founders, were then in the audience, and I gave my first business card to the president of the board. I said, here's Oaky. I'm starting my own company now. And she was like, oh, that's amazing, blah, blah. So that was cool. And I still have that business card. I can see if I can find it. I can show it to the camera. And then basically we found an investor who was crazy enough to invest some money into this idea. And we now realize he invested in us as people. Think he saw some drive and something interesting, but it sure wasn't for the business plan that we presented, if I put it like that. I've tried to read that again, and it's like Greek, like I don't get anything what we're trying to say.
Yeah.
But he basically said, okay, you wanna focus on feedback during the moment of experience. Why don't you do it within the hotel industry? And we were just like, yeah, it makes complete sense. I have a lot of it.
Yeah.
I had a lot of interaction and knowledge and network. So we started off there, and with the money we hired one developer, and that was our first employee. And basically, us as a team, together with one other company, we could then build the minimum viable product. So the first thing that we could sell, and that would be our first milestone, that to have someone actually pay for this. And that happened maybe 8-9 months later. There was a hotel chain that bought Oaky. Yeah.
Wow. So, and it's evolved a lot since, right? Like you guys have obviously changed. So what were, I guess, because I've had quite a few guests on the show that have, they talk about the company, what it was, what the idea was, the problem they were trying to solve. But then they're like, well, if you look at us today, it's completely different because, like you said, looking at your first business plan, it looks like Greek. So it's like, obviously things change. There's probably, it's not a straight path to be like, okay, this is the product, this is what we're going to sell, and it's just going to go. Like you're going to have a lot of like changes and tweaks to the business plan. So what was like the feedback either from your first clients or just from yourselves as a team being more aware of like, okay, like we're not really solving this problem, but there's this bigger thing that we can solve based on what we've already built. I'm curious.
The problem we wanted to solve obviously was a guest leaving the hotel without having his or her voice heard will leave a bad review, and you can't do anything about that anymore. So we wanted to create this real-time interaction. This was before all the OTAs were doing this, and this was actually a thing. But once we went live with hotels that were like, say, not mega luxury and had like a concierge and like a really tip-top service, you notice immediately that if they fail to respond to these real-time interactions, it's like a double negative. And also, when we try to sell this to a lot of hoteliers, they're like, not so sure I need that. I can talk to my guests. I know everyone by name. You get that sort of spiel. And what most people said, and this was the main trigger, was, how do I make money off of this? And you're trying to like say to them, well, there's an ROI in having higher review scores. You can have a higher ADR. As I've seen studies about that, which is maybe proven. But honestly, like how black and white is that? What is your as a solution? What is your contribution to that ADR then? So we just went back to the drawing board, maybe like a year and a half in or so. And we just started doing interviews. How can we generate more revenue? And we just went to all of the hoteliers that we knew, probably did 40, 50 interviews. And the main thing that we understood was that there was this really interesting thing called upselling. And for us, what we heard back then, this was now I think it was 2015 maybe. So what is that? 6-7 years ago?
Yeah, just about.
There was what we heard, especially from the branded hotels, the Hiltons, the Marriotts, the Starwood at the time. They were saying, okay, there's only one player that does this. It's called Nor1. It's a big American company that have been around forever. So they had already like started upselling like 10 years prior to that. And what they always saying, like what is so interesting about upselling is you have a captive audience. You know a lot about the guests that are like potentially interacting with the upsells because they've already made the booking. And the more data you can utilize, the more smart you can be around when to send something, how to sell it, what to sell, and also have a business model behind the solution that really like makes it interesting for hotels to upsell kind of everything and anything that there is. We were super excited about that. And the best thing was we could see what they bought, right? So that was for us, like once we developed just a very simple thing, buy a room upgrade, and we saw, oh my God, someone bought a room upgrade, we generated $40, and we could just see 40 on that little dashboard. We were like, okay, this is a no-brainer. So we just put a lot of effort into that. But we still, and this is maybe a big learning if there are any aspiring entrepreneurs out there, that would be a trigger moment immediately to just say, okay, let's go of the feedback, let's focus on this. But we continued a good year with both of them in parallel until, and maybe this is milestone number 2, we took in new investors who were from the industry, like people that are pretty well known in the PMS world, or that have been working with revenue management systems, etc. And what they all said was basically, you have a really small team. If you're going to be good at something, you need to focus. So either you kill the feedback or you kill the upselling, but it wouldn't make sense to kill the upselling because every one of your customers is using that and it's easy to sell, etc., etc. And the other one was only used by maybe 40% of the customer base at that point.
Wow.
So that's when we decided, okay, easy peasy, pop, let's go. And for us, it was actually it sounds easy now, but I remember that we were competing at the time with like CRM players. I don't need to mention any names in this podcast, but we were competing with like CRMs that were offering, across the full guest journey solution. And for us to decide to go only in one pre-arrival upselling was going to be our thing. It felt so small that what most hoteliers were saying to us at the time was like, okay, Erik, sounds great, but honestly, we want one solution to do everything for us. Mm-hmm. And so that was why we were thinking, oh my God, we also need to be that one solution that does everything.
Yeah.
But it turned out that the best advice we could have ever gotten, and also take to heart, was to forget about that and just become best at a small thing, and then continue from there. And that's what became Oaky ultimately. Yeah.
I love that. And something I wrote down is that I think it's funny as entrepreneurs, and it's a common theme that I'm seeing throughout every interview and just even through our day-to-day life, is just that you need to listen to your customers, because sometimes they know your product or what your product needs to be better than you do, because we get so tunnel vision, like, okay, we need to be a review, like a management focus, when they're like, no, we need to make money off of this thing. This thing needs to make us money, not cost us money. And I just find that very interesting. And a question for you, for that 40% that was more or less on just like the review side of things, was it easy to convince them to move to the upselling solution?
No, they also had upsell. They also had upsell at the same time. Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah. Okay. I was gonna say, was it easy for them to just move over? But if they're already using it, then
everybody was using upsell, but only 40% of them was using both. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I love that. So with your investors giving you that advice, saying focus, you have a small team, you can't do everything for everyone. What was the trajectory from there? Kind of just honing in. Did you guys put your head down for a while? Did you start making big splashes? What was kind of like, okay, if we're going to focus on this one product, this one tool that's going to make us revenue, what were the next steps for you guys as a team?
For us, it was like, we had to figure out personalization. That was a big thing. We couldn't keep sending, everything to everyone. The beauty of upselling for us at the outset was the personalization piece. Be able to sell the right deal to the right guest at the right time for the right price. Like, that's the mantra, right? And that's what you want to. That's the holy grail. So we developed that. I remember very quickly a very powerful segmentation engine that would allow us to take all of this data from the PMS or the channel manager or what have you, and then create segments within that, and then basically send personalized messages, but also personalize the offerings that every guest would see. This is very standard nowadays, but back then it was kind of a new thing, because even the American player, Nor1, didn't really do that much in terms of personalization at the time.
Yeah.
And then after that, it was so nice actually, because we had gotten rid of that feedback part, and now we could just become nerds about upselling. So we just learned everything. I remember starting to study about behavioral science. Got super into that, how you can use a lot of different types of effects, or how do you call it, like techniques, basically to use the biases that we have in our brains to persuade us to do stuff. But also it was like stuff, how do we optimize for room upgrades? We knew very quickly that we wanted to be as self-serve as possible, so that hotels needed to go in and basically create deals and create content. Okay, so how do we inspire hoteliers in terms of what they can upsell? And we always had this business model where we were flat fee at that time. So hotels would just sell anything and everything as long as it was legal through Oaky, right? So there were hotels that were selling goldfish to their. They were creating a funny segment. Lonely business travelers, like business travelers traveling alone, they would be offered a goldfish, And then like they would buy the goldfish, and then when they enter the room, there would be like a little note saying, "Hey, Will, I'm happy to keep you company for the night," or something. Hope you enjoy your stay. And that went viral. Someone took pictures, and it went on to this kids' rights organization, talking about whether this was like bad for the animals. Crazy. And all that publicity was just incredible. So we had a really exciting ride, and eventually we started seeing, we started to become really good at it. Conversion became our thing. How do you put the right deal in front of the guest and make them buy it, right? That was always the thing that we were dabbling with. And our team grew, and we could hire more specialist roles within this. Our partnerships became really significant because we knew what we were talking about. We started to getting invited to things. Bigger customers started to gravitate towards us. We started getting inbound from those that were now using Nor1. And then the biggest milestone, maybe that there were many milestones of the career, but maybe one of the biggest ones was when one of the bigger hotel chains in the world switched from them to us. And then it was champagne all over in the office. And that was a really cool. Then it really felt like, wow, we came far, because it was it was incredibly different. I remember signing up a big hotel chain versus all of those smaller ones in the beginning, where the security wasn't that big of a deal, GDPR wasn't so special, and then it's a completely different ballgame. So when we had done that the first time, and we successfully rolled out a lot of hotels quickly, that was really special.
Yeah, well, it kind of forces you to kind of re-up, right? Like to kind of elevate a little bit more of, again, like some clients not worried about security, GDPR, all that other stuff, but now you have like, all right, we have to know this stuff as well. So it's always good to always push you a little bit further. I keep thinking of like the days, 2018, 19, when I was a hotel manager. Granted, we were in like a small coastal town, so like it wasn't very tech savvy of a hotel, but we're a condominium hotel, so like jetted tubs, fireplaces, living rooms, kitchens, all that stuff. And we had the check-in card, so you have a check-in registration paper and filing system, and of course you had MSI and all the other stuff, but we never had like an upsell feature. And so one of my big things was like, all right, we need to make more money. What's the easy low bearing fruit that we can do? Let's get someone who's in a studio or a 1-bedroom and get them to pay a 40, 60, 80, or even $100 upgrade because we have the inventory. So we would highlight these reg cards. I would highlight them and put a sticky note, and I'd put like $60 ? Or whatever. And I would tell my team and said, hey, if you see a sticky note with a highlight on the room type, then that's your opportunity to upsell. And you should, ask them what they're in town for. You need to do all like the psychology side, like become their best friends, maybe kiss some ass a little bit. Like that's kind of where it kind of got into. But I remember seeing like month over month, we would do a lot better with revenue, not just on ADR, but our upsells. But I always think about, if I had Oaky, or if I had the approval or the access to Oaky at that time, would we have tripled, quadrupled our numbers? Because we're human, we can't catch everything. When you're trying to upsell somebody, but the maintenance is calling you on the radio, and then you have the front desk phone ringing, and then you have housekeeping carts rolling by, or whatever, or just people in the lobby, it's just bound to happen that you've missed multiple opportunities to kind of do that. So I always think about that, because like, especially now knowing Oaky, I'm like, man, this would have been so perfect. I would have been put on a pedestal at my hotel job with my GM or whatever, and just being like, oh, you got $100,000 in upsells. Just kidding, but
it's just possible. The most one hotel ever did was like $85,000 in a month or something.
Jeez.
And that's only pre-arrival upselling, only pre-arrival.
Wow.
But the truth is, right, you have to just look at it from your guest perspective. That's always how I think about upselling. So some guests, they like the personal interaction. They would probably prefer to be upsold at the front desk. But you also obviously have a lot of guests which are the other way around, that they don't like to be stressed when they're checking in, and they love to do things at their own convenience. And if I was a hotelier, I would absolutely offer both. we see that, interestingly, there's no cannibalization of the front desk upselling by having pre-arrival upselling. So you're either attracting a different crowd, but we also see that the people that are willing to buy something pre-stay, if you have a very active like front desk team, they can then pick up on that and say, hey, Will, we saw that you upgraded to a deluxe room with our pre-stay email. You know what? There is a suite available for only $50 more. And then it turns out that you're more prone to buy more if you bought pre-stay. So those guests are actually, just because you're willing to spend more money, I think. So there are definitely some interesting links. The hotels, I think, that are doing this the best way, they're probably generating equal amounts in stay and pre-stay, but it completely varies, of course, depending on type of property and segments and stuff like that. But it's really interesting, and it is definitely, it's like our vision is to be the one central upsell platform that can hold all of the content and all of the inventory and all of the pricing, etc., and the understanding of what to sell to whom, and then act kind of like an internal channel manager. So you say, okay, these deals get sold in the booking engine, these deals get sold pre-stay, these deals will get sold upon a check-in, and these deals will be offered when the guest is in stay, basically. And that's the next kind of step for us, to take it out across the full guest journey. So we're launching some really, really cool things around that this year.
I love that. I'll probably learn more at High Tech, so that'd be cool.
Yeah, definitely.
The psychology side of it, I know you and I, you kind of talked about the passion of like what goes into the thinking, the brain like activity of an upsell, right? So for you guys, have you hired like psychologists or any kind of like, have you gone down that route of the deeper meaning of like why people, like how to capture, like, because it's easy to say, I think, as hoteliers or even in the short-term rental world, where we're talking about how are you going to generate more revenue for your business outside of the nightly rate, and of course it's pre-arrival, this in-stay, all that good stuff. But for us to say the right guest at the right place at the right time at the right price, easy. But what is that, like, what does that look like on the back end? How do you know the signals of being the right place or the right person? Like, what are the giveaways? Like, have you guys gone down that rabbit hole of, what to look for, what not to look for? What's the easy, what's a hard one, whatever it may be? Like, do you guys have like a gauge on that?
Yeah, so I can give you a couple of examples. I just had to bring up one presentation that I did a while back, which is so amazing. Okay, so basically it starts with a story, like, because you're asking me, are we doing a lot of this research ourselves? Well, actually, there has been loads of research done already, so you can put into practice what has been done. That would be my advice number one. And buy a book like Predictably Irrational by Dan Ariely or something.
There we go.
And then just read that book, and then you'll be inspired with a bunch of stuff. That would be my like low-hanging fruit. But one really interesting thing that I think is mentioned in this book is a research about judges. So it's called decision-making fatigue. So basically what the idea is if you're taking too many decisions in a short succession of time, you're going to be super tired, and then at some point you're just going to say, yeah, okay, fine, because you're tired of making that decision. So they researched this with judges somewhere in the States, and when they basically sit there in the early morning, every what's it called, when you're in jail, when you're in jail, what is it called that you are?
You're a prisoner.
Prisoner.
Yeah.
Every prisoner that would appear in front of them in the morning would never ever get parole, but like the closer and closer that you get to lunch, the more tired the judges are, and the more the parole they give. And then they go to lunch, they come back, they have reset their energy, and nobody's getting parole, and then it goes up again. And super interesting, right? So it turns out that you're basically more willing to take hard decisions in the morning or right after lunch. And we did here's the link with the upselling part. So we did a research some time ago, looking at when is the best time of the day to upsell. So we A/B tested leisure guests versus business. And can you guess what time of the day is best to upsell to a leisure traveler?
I wouldn't say morning, probably because they're just probably frantic. They're trying to get on their vacation, but I would say maybe afternoon. They're probably more relaxed. They are closer to the destination. They're already thinking of themselves on the beach or wherever they're going to be. So I'm assuming afternoon for the leisure. I could be totally wrong.
Yeah, you are. It's like we tried like morning, after lunch, and afternoon, and it turns out that morning has the highest conversion rate for leisure travelers. But conversely, oh no, sorry, I'm reading it wrong. Business guests has the highest conversion rate in the morning, and conversely, leisure guests has the highest conversion rate in the afternoon. You have to cut that away, or just keep it. No, so that's a really interesting one in terms of time of day of upselling. It's based on a bias where you're more likely to make decisions. Like basically, you should try to offer something when someone is a little bit tired, basically, because then you have a higher chance of making success. The other one is choice overload, of course. How much upsell offers should you offer? There was like a research done where they presented 24 types of jam in the supermarket versus 6 types, and having 6 types of jam was yielding like 300% more revenue or something. And we also analyzed that, and we found out that if you offer room upgrades, early check-in, late checkout, parking, room attributes, and F&B offers, resulting in somewhere around like 10 different types of deals, including all the room upgrade offers, then you have the optimal like amount of deals that to present to any given segment to maximize conversion rate.
So don't do just one. Don't just be like, hey, here's a room upgrade. Okay.
No.
So definitely a good wide range.
Yeah, absolutely. At least pre-stay. But let's say you have a hotel maybe, and it's like very, very last minute, and you want to send a text message maybe instead of an email because it converts higher. Then that would be the only time when we've seen that it's more successful to maybe have it hyper relevant and say, hey, do you want to have an early check-in because you're arriving in an early flight or whatever that may be. And also, of course, when you're standing at the front desk, that it wouldn't make sense to just say, do you want this? Do you want this? Do you want this?
Yeah.
So you need to be quite relevant there as well.
Yeah.
And the list goes on. There's I love the part about, have you heard about the decoy effect?
The decoy effect? No. It sounds something like you could probably guess, but I would love to hear it.
Yeah. So basically it's like the example is from a cinema where you're standing and you want to buy popcorn. So there's a $3 popcorn and a $7 popcorn, which is way bigger. And when you see those next to each other, the $7 looks super expensive. And now you introduce a middle one, which costs $6.50, and which is a lot smaller than the $7. And all of a sudden, the $7 looks like it's super valuable, and the sales skyrocket there. So that's also something that you can use in upselling. You can say, here's a 3-course dinner and a 5-course dinner and a 5-course dinner with something extra. And then actually they have exactly the same price, but there's a decoy that makes that deal look way more appealing. Like we have this all the time. If you buy your MacBook or whatever on Apple's website, like every website that you see has this. And what the interesting thing is, when you talk about behavioral science, you're very quickly thrown into like this ethical dilemma. Am I fooling my guests? Because as hoteliers, I'm going to say we, because I've also been working in hotels. You want to be there for your guests, right? You're very thankful 100%. That they're coming. At the same time, you want to squeeze as much money out of them as you can. So where is the ethical dilemma? Well, I personally don't have a problem with this, because whatever we're buying online, we are being like attacked by all of these things, and like only 2 rooms left, etc., etc. So, but this is just the way that marketing works. And if I was a hotelier, I would be very interested in this, because there's some quick wins that you can do for sure.
For sure. Well, it's probably not a great example exactly like the popcorn one that you gave, but I always think of, my friends and I talk about the Costco chicken, the rotisserie chicken that Costco does. It's the stupid, it's a really good chicken, and it's like hot, ready to go. You take it home, like you can eat that sucker right away, and it's pretty decent size. But it's like $3.50 or something really cheap. And we're like, what the hell? This is like crazy. How are we getting chicken for $3.50? Really, like, tastes really good. It's big enough to feed a family, all this stuff. And then like we heard all these stories, and like there's a bunch of apparent like research or quotes from the Costco CEOs and all this other stuff saying that they lose money on this chicken because it's kind of like a, oh my gosh, this is such a great deal, it's stupid of me not to do it, but then you get it and then you're shopping and you think you just stole from Costco basically, and then you of course you go spend $500 on the rest of your groceries, so it's
crap
like
that you don't really need.
100%. So it's like it's not the best example, but it's still, I always think about that. Like, okay, if Costco can get you in with a $3 to $50, $3.50 chicken, like it's a rotisserie chicken. It's if you haven't had Eric, like when you come to Florida, go to Costco, get it for yourself. It's amazing. I'll bring it to High Tech, but it's gonna like it's so damn good, and you're like, oh man, they're losing on this, but at the end of the day, they're actually winning because you're like, I got this chicken for really cheap, but you just spent $1,000 on the rest of your food. So it's like, it's kind of, I think it's interesting to go into like the ethical dilemma like you're talking about, because we are a consumer, creature, I guess. Like we're creatures of habit that we like to consume. There's a small percentage of us that like to produce and like to, create consumables, but I think as an overall society, like we're very used to being sold to. We're very like, you go on Facebook and you talk about, let's say you're talking about a Peloton with your friends or your wife or whatever, and then you go through Facebook and then you see a Peloton ad. Like we're just
crazy, right?
we're just used to it. So I think you guys you shouldn't have to worry about the ethical side. Like it's there.
I'm not worried about it, but it's just interesting that it comes up when you speak to some hoteliers about this. It's never a roadblock, but it's just an interesting thing to think about. I think it's because behavioral science is so prominent in everything that we buy online, but it's not prominent in the hotel industry yet. And I don't see why not, because you can do so much. But just to get back on that, in my opinion, upselling should always be like, when we started upselling, I remember there was like some in some places there was a bad connotation. Upselling is like you're forcing someone to buy something more that they don't really want, and it's like cumbersome and all that. And for me, like upselling should be listening to what your guest wants, and ideally in a proactive manner being able to offer what they want for the right price and a super smooth experience to add that to their stay. Multiple stages around the guest journey. And just basically extend that offline service to a digital amazing experience across the full, all of the touch points. That's a real win-win. And then you're driving revenue, not because you're greedy and you're only trying to sell high profit margin deals, but you're actually offering all types of services and offers that you would like and think that your guests find relevant. So it's a beauty of it. It's an art in doing it the right way, I think.
100%. And I think the beauty and the art aspect is really true, because it's, if you look like pre-COVID, right? Like pre-COVID, a lot of people just weren't, they were so used to this check-in front desk experience, right? Like I have to go into a line, or just immediately, if it's a slow day at the hotel, they just go check in, get their key cards. Now I think hoteliers and even vacation rental, like just because I have to like bring both sides for our audience sake, but now guests are really expecting the opportunity to choose how they experience the property, whether it's checking in person or getting a mobile key card or PIN number for their code, and never seeing a human at all. Like just getting there, parking their car, taking out their stuff, going to the room. They want that flexibility, that opportunity to choose that. And I think like kind of what you're talking about, the art of being able to sell and create this other, extra revenue outside the nightly rate, is giving that enhancement of like letting them choose how they want to experience your property. Do they, if I'm on a business trip, I'm more likely not going to upgrade to a suite, but I'll definitely like do any type of upgrade when it comes to food and beverage and the other types of things I'm going to need or want, or parking. But if I'm there like with my significant other, am I going to want that upgrade and the food and beverage and probably, because I want to make the cool memories and I want to choose how we can experience that, and I don't want to be sold to like I'm at a car dealership. So I think
talking about that, like one of the coolest deals we ever sold was from a Hard Rock hotel in the Maldives. And it was called It was called, what was it called? Something with a diamond. So it was basically, they had a huge segment of people coming there to surprise, get engaged.
Yeah.
And so they then reached out to the booker via Oaky and say like, surprise her with a diamond or something. It was a crazy deal. It was like $2,500 when you like all the whole package. Like they had the ring arranged. They had like people playing violin on the beach and like beautiful little thing, like the whole thing. And they just took away all that stress. And this was actually bought by people who now wanted to what's it called when you get engaged? Like you're asking the question. I'm blanking.
The proposal. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And that was so cool. That for me, it was just like mind blown with the creativity. And it's just listening to what your guests want. That's really cool.
100%. So if I ever get to that point in my life where I'm ready to propose, I'm definitely going to go to the Hard Rock. I'll just take that stress off of me because I already know myself. I'll probably be sweating just thinking about it. But that's super cool.
Nervous moment doing that for sure.
Well, Erik, I really enjoyed the conversation, and I just think what you guys are doing is super cool. Obviously, leaders in the space, in and out of upselling. Obviously, like outside of pulling out a presentation, it like the back of your hand. So I think it's just super cool to hear your story. And for the listeners out there, I'm sure, this is a topic. Upselling, again, whether it's hotels or vacation rentals, I know this is something that I don't think is touched on enough, because I think if you can get your business or your operations to the point of being smooth, not having to put out as many flyers every day, right? Like guests get their check-in information, they get this, they get that. Like they don't need to have a lot of questions, right? You don't need to spend a lot of time putting out fires. I think you can spend more time being creative with your team and your operations. I'm like, all right, now what can we do to make this really special? What can we do to create this opportunity? And I think upselling / experiences and creativity like that is super untapped still to this day. So it's going to be very fun to, in 2023 or 24 or 25, whenever you and I revisit and kind of see the growth
would be amazing.
Of upselling. Yeah, it'll be
awesome. Be really amazing.
So.
And I have to say, like coming out of COVID, I feel like there's so much momentum right now. It's incredible. I feel really, 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 really positive and optimistic about the business, but also about the industry. And
100%.
That's going to be super cool. I would love to do another episode for sure. Let's see.
Perfect.
Maybe we're in vacation rentals by then. That would be amazing.
Hey, we'll get you in. I'll make some introductions. We'll get it going. No, it's super good. So for my famous last question for all the listeners that listen to the show regularly, to our guests is, if you had one link, which we're not going to do, we're going to, of course, plug everything Oaky and you in the show notes. But if you had one link specifically that you wanted the listeners to go to, whether it could be anything, it could be Oaky related, it could be a book, it could be a documentary, whatever. I've had crazy responses on that side of things. So it could be any link, but what would be the number one that you would want anyone to go to who's listening to the episode today?
What a good question. I would send them the why don't we do it on the theme based on today then? But is it actually a link that you're going to put in, or can I just
it'll be in the show notes, or they can Google it. Yeah.
Okay, cool. But then let's put a link with Dan O'Reilly talking at TEDx about behavioral science and some of these things that we've been talking about today. That would be
perfect.
Cool. Yeah,
I'll pull that up. So all the listeners out there, check out that link. Check out all the other links that we're going to have in the show notes. Erik, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. And everyone, we will see you all again next week. Thank you so much for listening, and thank you to our show partners for making Slick Talk, the hospitality podcast, possible. We hope you enjoyed the show, and we would love to connect with you outside of the podcast. So you can follow us on all of our social media channels for daily hospitality content, or find us on slicktalkthepodcast.com. And don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe so you never miss an episode. I'm your host, Will Slickers, and we will see you guys all again next week.